Hello, class. Today we're going to be covering the idea of narrative distance in writing. Now, what does that mean? The term narrative distance is referring to the closeness between the narrator and the characters. It describes the difference between what the main character sees and what the reader sees. Let's take a look at an example. The first snowstorm of the season blew through the city of Boulder. As the wind howled, a woman in a brown coat opened her front door and stepped outside. Now, what do we notice? We don't know much about this woman, do we? If this was a movie, the camera would be zoomed all the way out. The focus is on the wind and the storm, and not necessarily the woman in the coat. Who is she? Where's she going? The narrator doesn't say, and we have no way of knowing. We're just casual observers in her life. In this version, we move a little closer. We'll call this medium distance. Wrapped in her warmest coat, Mary Parks opened her front door and stepped reluctantly into the first snowstorm of the season. She'd run out of dog food days ago and had been feeding her puppy biscuits in the hopes that the weather would improve if she simply waited. Here you want to pay attention to the details that have been included. The focus is shifted from the setting to the character. We learn the character's name. We learn about her emotional state. She's not just going outside, she's going outside reluctantly. We learn why she's going out, she needs to get dog food, and it gives us a hint about her personality. Next, we're going to do an extreme close-up shot of this character. Mary pulled her coat tight around her neck, braced herself, and stepped out into the snowstorm. The howling wind nipped at her runny nose. Boy, it was freezing. Why on earth had she waited so long to buy dog food? Poor Pebbles had been living off biscuits for days. Here we have a level of detail that lets us look right into Mary's head. We, the readers, feel the sensation of her cold, runny nose. We can deduce, without being told, that her dog's name is Pebbles. The narrator presents her thoughts as a natural part of the story. Why on earth had she waited so long? There's no tag after this line telling us Mary thought, Mary wondered, Mary lamented. We just accept that these thoughts are running through her head as she heads out into the cold. Now, what happens if we go up really close to our character? We might choose to jump from third person to first person. The narrator actually becomes the character, and then we have Mary herself telling us her own thoughts. You can't get much closer than that. So, now that we're familiar with what narrative distance is, the trick is learning how much distance you should use in a particular scene. One thing you should keep in mind when considering narrative distance is what the emotional effect will be on the reader. If the narrator is very close to the character, it can build more of a relationship between the reader and the character. You can give small details much more significance if you show them through the protagonist's eyes. On the other hand, if you're writing a heavy, serious scene like a tragic death, maybe you want to back up a little. When you describe something sad with a lot of narrative distance, it can actually make the reader feel the sadness more strongly. Your narration will avoid melodrama and create a stark contrast to the emotional events of your story. I read a great piece of advice from writer Lisa Burke. She said that when it comes to writing, emotions are like cats. Chase one and it will run away, but sit still and ignore it, and it will warily approach. Basically, don't always assume that describing your character's every thought will make the reader feel the same way. Now that you're all familiar with the concept, I want each of you to leave a comment below, quoting a short excerpt from a story of your choice. Describe how much narrative distance you think the author used, and explain how you can tell.